Israel's miracles. And how do you make miracles? And how can we make miracles? There's a lot of miracles. Honestly, there's so many miracles. We probably are almost like saturated, if we can use that word, with miracles. There's so many miracles. But I was thinking of some of the miracles. Sometimes the miracles are created by our own behaviors. And I think that's really a very significant point to focus on. We receive miracles from God, but we also create miracles, obviously with Him on board. There's two types of ways we create miracles. Sometimes we consciously try to create a miracle for ourselves or for someone else, and we do more, do good, we add, and miracles happen. And we were a partner in that miracle. We were asking for the miracle, we were pushing for the miracle, we did things for the miracle, and God responded, which Kabbalistically, there's a Kabbalistic term for that. It's called Isarusa de la Sata, Isarusa de la Ela. Those are Aramaic words, which mean an arousal from below stimulates a response, which is the arousal from above. So our specific focus efforts, I am in the let's make a miracle business, and I am doing this for that. And I'm doing it, and that happens. I did, God responded. We're God's partners in creating miracles. There's another type of miracles we make, which is that we're serving God. And we're not consciously asking for a miracle, thinking about a miracle, trying to create a miracle. We're serving God. And God responds in miraculous ways. And there were many stories that have come out since the war of people doing their thing that created miracles. I do try whatever stories I share to vet them, to make sure as much as I can to ascertain the authenticity, which doesn't mean that what I'm not sharing isn't. It's just I do really try to do that. So two quick stories that maybe have heard. Just want to focus on this point. So one is there was a yeshiva on Simchas Torah, and the yeshiva was not attacked in a city where that was attacked. And like, what's going on? How did this yeshiva remain unscathed when the whole area was brutally attacked? They checked. They saw on the security cameras terrorists came, and they see on the security cameras. They came, they stood, they're waiting, and they left. And they're like, what is going on? Especially when they saw all the documentation and how they all knew this was a very planned, like at least a year plus an advance attack. They knew every place. They knew the times of davening. They knew everything. So they come and they leave. And when they did some research, they realized that exactly the time they came, which the terrorists knew was a time of prayer. And that's why they came at that time, to get and murder as many Jews as possible, because they're all gathered for prayer. They came exactly during the time of the Shemona Esrei. And because with the Shemona Esrei, they're standing outside and they don't hear a thing. And in the Arabs, praying is very loud. And they know there's supposed to be a lot of people there. And they know they're supposed to be praying. It's perfectly quiet. I guess no one's home today. And they left. But it was interesting, because the terrorists waited a long time, which of course is sort of weird. And why didn't they walk in and check out themselves? I mean, obviously God was very involved. But from the human end, this beautiful story emerged that the Chazan, who was this young man from France, who before Rosh Hashanah, he went to his spiritual leader, his Rebbe, who's the Rebbe of Chernobyl, who lives in Bnei Brak, and he asked him for a blessing for the year. And what was his guidance for the year? And this, his spiritual leader, the Rebbe of Chernobyl, told him to pray with deeper focus and to double the time he takes on the Shemona Esrei Amid. He's the Chazan. He was doubling his time. Looking at the security cameras, it seems this double time saved everyone inside. Was he trying to create the miracle? No, he didn't know what was going on. Nobody there knew what was going on. Nobody even understood what happened until afterwards when they checked the cameras and then figured out the times, and then the whole story unfolded. But his prayers, not asking for God for the miracle, definitely created them. And there's many other stories like that. Another one that I heard also, checked into to hear reliable, was this whole story of soldiers in Gaza, sleeping in an area they had taken over, where there was exactly 9 beds. There's a lot more than 9 soldiers. So no problem. 9 people get the beds, and everyone else goes on the rooftop, and after a while we're going to switch, and we're going to keep switching until we have to keep marching. The 9 soldiers are about to collapse. They're all exhausted, and they're like, wait, we have an opportunity. We could pray. We don't necessarily pray every day, let alone 3 times a day when you're fighting in Gaza, but we actually can do it now. So even though we desperately are craving sleep, we'll pray. And they're like, great, but wait, there's 9 of us. A minyan is 10. No problem. There's lots of soldiers on the roof. So they went up to the stairs to ask someone to volunteer to come down and join the prayer. And there was one soldier walking down then anyway. And they said, oh, great, can you come? Can you join? We want to pray with a minyan, with a quorum. And he's like, I'm not interested. There's a lot of soldiers on the roof. Get someone else. They're like, please, 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 just come. Just join us. We're all exhausted. We only have a few minutes on the beds. Just come, join, a quick ma'ariv. And then he's like, all right, fine. I'm just going to the bathroom. He's going to come back. He'll join them. Fine. He goes. He doesn't come back. They're waiting. Like, how many minutes does it take? They're like, something weird is going on. They went and they heard scuffling and they broke down the door. And in that bathroom, there was a terror tunnel. And they were trying to pull this man down, holding their hand on his mouth so he shouldn't scream and let anyone else know. And then they were going to come up to slaughter the soldiers. Because of the whole prayer situation, they realized what was going on. They managed to save him, to kill the terrorists, and to save themselves. They weren't trying to make a miracle. They weren't thinking about it. They just were trying to pray and go to sleep. But their sincere efforts, this was the response. I just share one other one because I think this is a really important point for us to think about. And this one, I actually know the family of the man that this happened to. So the person I know said his brother-in-law, who was in the reserves in Gaza, Melchiel ben Yosef, and they were in an area that was completely cleared of terrorists, completely bulldozed, and they were given a few minutes to break. Everyone's just sitting down, very drained. And this man who's religious said, oh my gosh, the sun's almost setting. Again, I have an opportunity to pray. I don't always have an opportunity to daven the afternoon prayer, but in Gaza, but now I can. So he stood up to daven mincha facing Yerushalayim, as we do when we're in Israel. And all the other soldiers were in another direction. He was facing Yerushalayim. He starts davening. He's in the middle of Shemona Esrei. And he sees this terrorist with an RPG coming up from the ground, from a tunnel that they didn't know about, and therefore they hadn't destroyed. And he, of course, doesn't make a difference Shemona Esrei or not. This is, saving lives. He shouted, he shot. This got all the other soldiers to turn around, and they eliminated the terrorists, and they destroyed that tunnel. And all the soldiers were so moved, they all said to God, tomorrow we're all davening the mincha prayer. I think all three of these stories, they all happen to be about prayer, though that wasn't really my point. But they all really bring out this really powerful, practical point. Sometimes we're really trying to create miracles, and we do, and it's amazing. And sometimes we're not even trying to create miracles. We're serving God. And then we see, literally a miraculous response. Anyone here, does this resonate with? Has seen this? Has seen this idea that they try to make a miracle and they see the response? Or even more, that they weren't trying to make a miracle, but they are working on their relationship with God and they see things happen that unbelievable. Anyone?
Me.
Yeah, Elle, seeing it. Which way?
I try to make a miracle and I need a Yeshua, but I think the Yeshua was tied in with miracles happening. And I try to make a miracle. I mean, I increased my kavana, I increased my davening, I increased my chesed, I increased my tzedakah, I start taking on things. The two different instances, I really need a Yeshua, it badly. And both times I definitely saw a Yeshua and miracles along the way that helped.
And both times you saw that.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
definitely.
Is it amazing how powerful we are? Me too. It's amazing. We really do have this power. Now, again, you could say, well, it doesn't always work. Or sometimes, I don't know, I'm trying. But there's believing in God's system. Dina?
I was in Eretz Yisrael recently, and on the plane home, I sat next to a woman who was really chatty, and it was really sweet. And both her son-in-laws were chaylim, and she was saying how she was creating miracles for them, and she was saying little stories that were. I mean, I don't think I don't know if she was more traditional. I don't know if she was very religious, but she really believed in it, and she really saw these small miracles. And she was saying something about how her son-in-law hadn't been in touch with the family in a really long time because he was fighting, and he didn't have his phone, and it was something like a week or 2 weeks or something that was a long time, and it was longer than usual. And so she said, I'm going to take one thing upon myself, just a small doable thing. And she said that night her son-in-law came home, and just in time for Kiddush Friday night. And she said, just exactly like what you're saying. It just is bringing it back to me.
Yeah. Everyone, cousins, children. One was in Gaza. One is still in the north. I think they keep them in Gaza shorter because it's so incredibly draining there. Unbelievable. And yeah, when he came back from Gaza, he was there for like 2 months, and he said every day there were miracles. Every person that survives there, it's a miracle. I mean, this whole tunnel scenario creates a whole dimension that Israel has never dealt with, that no army deals with. No, I mean, people are wondering, we're used to like the 6 Day War. Okay, not the 6 Day War. Okay, the Yom Kippur War. Like, not this day after day after day. But when we understand what they're contending with, when we understand the tunnels and what that means, and now they're finding tunnels in the West Bank also. It says Ein Bal Hanes Makir Beniso, our sages say. So often the recipient of the miracle doesn't even know about it, to recognize it, to appreciate it, and say thank God for it. It's just, especially with this tunnel factor, that's making things so incredibly dangerous. There's so many miracles, and sometimes we could think, yeah, her simple, sweet faith. No, it's making a huge difference. Aliza?
So I know that you touched upon this in a class maybe last year, but just the same in terms of refresher. So we want the miracles. We want personal Yeshuas, and we want the Yeshua for Klal Yisrael. What concrete things? Yes, we're davening. Yes, we're learning. Yes, we're doing more, and we're looking to be more. What other concrete things can we do to help facilitate the miracles?
I think if I would say it in very broad terms, because obviously everything is very situation specific, but if I was giving someone a generic answer, my generic answer, like for anything you want to create, would be 1, trust. Trust is an enormously powerful tool we have. As Lubavitcher Rebbe says, it's for non-Jews and Jews. Trust is enormously powerful. Our trust creates reality. Charity and Tehillim, Tzedakah and Tehillim, are like the most classical tools we have. They're so strong. The third Rebbe of Chabad, the Tzemach Tzedek, said, if we only knew the power of Tehillim, we would say Tehillim all day long. So lately I started this for Israel. It's actually interesting what Aliza's saying, because I really started this for Israel, but now I do it a lot for myself as well. Besides any official Tehillim I'm saying, if I'm walking, like if it's Shabbos and I'm walking to or from shul, or if I'm driving somewhere and I don't have a reason where I have to be on the phone, I just say Tehillim that I know by heart. I just am the whole time saying Tehillim. If I'm walking somewhere, if I'm driving somewhere, meaning if I'm engaged in something where I can say Tehillim as I'm doing it. In my life, those are my 2 opportunities. Besides, I'm not saying my regular Tehillim. I mean, my Tehillim. I'm saying just for extra. I intend with each chapter that I say, I have an intention. This is for this child. This is for this situation. This is for this going on. This is for Israel. Each Tehillim, I'm very consciously, I'm very intentful. I'm very focused what it's for. Because truly, if I only knew the power, I'd be saying it all day long. Well, listen, let me try. So trust, Tehillim, and Tzedakah. And then the 4th generic idea is, if we could sometimes look into the area that we're looking for the salvation in and think, like, what can I do to fix or to mirror that situation? Like, let's say you want to globally create unity among the Jewish people. So you're asking for God for a miracle, a very significant miracle. So what can you do to enhance unity in your own relationships? Or let's say you see someone that's suffering because they have tremendous anxiety. Well, what can I do to bolster my own serenity, calmness, belief, and trust in God, with the intention that this should go to help that person? Which sort of touches on this other idea that I've said before, as Aliza said, but definitely is worth repeating, which is, obviously, very often when we're consciously trying to create miracles, it's not always for ourselves. To reach someone else in our life or in the world. And you always can do that. You always can do that. You can always create a miracle for someone else. And I know many people that are not, saintly, godly, tzaddikim, they've done it. They've created miracles for people. And it's sometimes, you don't always see, but sometimes if you can see what they need and how you can do something that matches that, that's also something very powerful. Helping someone else, how many times people in that area, how many times people that are looking for to help someone get married will specifically support people that are trying to raise funds for their wedding or something like that. I'm looking for my child to get married. I want to help you get married. Or someone will help someone make a match, or someone will counsel someone who's going out. I want this person to get married. I'm going to help someone else get married. I see, many, many, many examples along those lines. So those will be what I would say those 4 areas: trust, Tehillim, tzedakah, and looking, if possible, it's not always possible, but if possible, looking for what most matches the need, the lack, or the desired goal. And if you can't find anything, you could just take on any area that would mean a lot to God. What generally means a lot to God? Whatever you really struggle with. There is I don't know if fairness is the right word, but God has justice. God knows. So this person is taking on covering their hair. I know a number of women that took on covering their hair since what happened in Israel. This person taking on covering of their hair, and it's so hard for her. Now this person taking on covering her hair, and it's not such a big deal. She just isn't interested, doesn't think she has to, whatever. If for some person it's very, very hard, that weighs the scale. That gives a lot of weight to what you're doing. So I would actually add that as another point, because when you really look at yourself honestly, even if it doesn't seem directly related to the issue that you're trying to create the miracle in, but if this is so difficult for me, my personal never will do difficulty, and you do that, that has a lot of power, because God definitely factors in how difficult it is for us. So I would say really those 5 ideas then: trust, charity, Tehillim, finding something that matches the issue, and specifically attacking what's your area of weakness. Dina.
So the mirroring thing, I love that. I think you and I've talked in the past about doing this for my clients who have immense struggles. And I have to say, it's so effective. Very slowly and surely, all of a sudden, I'm like one day waking up like, wow, he's so much better at that. And I was wondering, my question is, do you have to know the person that you're taking on something for? Like, does that have to be like with intention with a certain person, or can it be like, let's say, someone who's like a soldier who's struggling, or with like mental health, or trying to strengthen trust in that sense? Can it just be in a general way?
You're saying, could you have an intention, not that you know who the person is, but there are soldiers that are suffering with a lot of PTSD now. You want to do something to help those people. Of course.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay. Doesn't have to be like a specific person in mind necessarily.
No. And by the same token, you don't have to know their Hebrew name or their mother's name. I always say, God,
Okay.
you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's fine. I don't worry about those details. If I know, beautiful. If I don't know, beautiful. I'm not limiting God to that. So yeah, 100%. And it's very beautiful and it's very selfless, and miracles happen. It's wonderful what Dina's saying, that nice commercial, how she's seen her clients change. Wouldn't you want to have a therapist who takes on something to help their client and then does it sincerely and sees how the client's changing? Isn't that beautiful? It's the same thing, for teachers doing that for their students, for people, anyone. We can help anyone. Shira.
Sorry, my phone keeps going in and out. Can someone do it for their what's it called? Their Zivug.
To find a Zivug because they haven't found one yet?
Yeah, like can you say like, okay, so
absolutely. I highly recommend that to some girls.
like my guy is maybe just like schlepping along really slow and he needs me to like pick him up a little bit.
Yeah.
It really could work. Like that. I don't know.
Absolutely. I
okay. Whoa. Okay.
I've told people that.
Dina, this is for you, honey.
I know. Thank you, Shira. I just have to jump in here. Wait, what does that mean? Can we what?
Okay, I'll tell you what it means. It means that if the guy that you're supposed to marry is not as awesome as you, which he probably isn't yet, he's not gonna find you because you're too awesome for him. So you gotta take something upon yourself to get him moving along so he could be as awesome as you.
Be more awesome? What does that mean?
Yes, for his sake, because he's so not awesome yet.
No.
So I have to be more awesome in order to
You're saying it will never get even. Yeah, Shira is right. I might phrase it a little differently, but she did a pretty good job. But yeah, you could say, yeah, I definitely, sometimes if a girl is older, if a boy is older, it goes in both directions. I think of it like this. Let's step away from the specific thing. Let's think about it. Exactly like she was saying. Exactly like she's saying. Imagine there's a couple where either one, the man or the woman, we don't have to be racist and just think it's going to be the woman, but either one has really worked on themselves, is really progressing in their emotional development, their, spiritual development, their selves as a person, and then the other one isn't exactly in that space yet. Well, how is it going to be a shidduch? So like she was saying, they can't meet yet, because if they met, it would be like, why? So sometimes I would, depending on the situation, I would tell someone, yeah, you know what? It might be a good idea for you to do something as a spiritual virtue to give merit, just like you could give merit to these PTSD suffering soldiers in Israel. You could get merit to this client of yours. You could get merit to a parent, to a sibling, to a child, to a friend. You could give merit to your future spouse and say this should help him or her be ready for marriage. Because
What
clearly,
does that mean? Like,
if they were ready, the two of you would meet. Now, obviously, you could say, no, maybe it's not me. Oh, okay, I'm not saying that. But sometimes the person's like, no, like, right, I'm really ready. Maybe they're not ready yet. And maybe that's why you haven't met.
so what's an example of something that like they wouldn't be ready in yet that I could take on?
So since
Sorry to
you
hijack
don't,
this.
yeah, I know I was going to say that, but it's we'll stop on this point. Since you don't know, probably, then you could just try to think of what could be the broad strokes of what could, what could be the broad strokes of my, for example, focusing more in my prayers to help this other person connect to God, because
Or
prayers
Mrs. Turner, what about like, since our partner's supposed to make us better people, and usually they have what we don't have, maybe something that's really hard for us, there's a good chance they have it. So maybe work on that.
That could work.
No?
That could totally work. This still continues when you're married. This could always work. Again, we're not exonerating anyone from work. Obviously, whatever you do is not going to remove the onus of work from the other person. But we can try to create miracles. We can create merit. We can put things in the other person's bank account. We can facilitate the situation. So yes, a person definitely can say, okay, I've got a really schleppy spouse somewhere out there. Let me do something to help him get his act together a little more and be ready for, like she was saying, wonderful me, So yes, definitely you can do that. And it's really amazing our power, because again, I want to go back to what Yael said. Yael said she did it twice and it worked. It was amazing. Now, Dina just said she did it for certain clients and she saw it like over time. So I wanted to point out that both are true. And sometimes you're targeting something and it's just such a clear target that you really see, whoa, it happened. And sometimes it's a little more subtle, it's a little more nuanced, and you're working and you see a little shift, and you're working and you see a little shift. And we just have to keep trusting the process, because the process is God. This is his process. And as we trust the process and as we work, we should see the results. And she was 100% right. You can definitely bring down merit for your intended spouse, who at the moment is nameless, because God knows his name, God knows his address. And you can definitely try to think of those generic strokes of what could I do that would be helpful for this other person. But any good thing is helpful. I go back to, forget, this mysterious person, someone you know someone and they're suffering a certain way, and you can't think of any cool measure for measure thing you can do. It's okay. Do something. Especially, as I said, do something really difficult for you. Doing something really difficult always has enormous power by God. Do something really difficult, it should do the job. So you could think of that as well for your Emir Hashem chassan situation. Pulling out something really difficult from yourself is always very, very, very powerful.